help to heal, and more details emerging about the shooter. We don't even want to say his name. He's been described as a loner, someone who kept himself socially awkward.
But does any of that behavior, do any of those individual aspects of his personality, can those be the attributes that specifically drove this young man to commit these acts of violence? Here now to talk about all of this, criminal psychologist Dr. Bart Rossi. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Nice to be with you.
Everyone, when a crime like this happens, wants to immediately understand it 24 hours later. It's a natural instinct. Right. Can we?
Well, I think we can in a certain way. There's a profile for people like this, really. They actually feel like they're the victim in many ways. They feel that the world is against them at some point in time. And psychologists talk a lot about retained anger. Usually these folks have anger over a long period of time, and it expresses itself later in rage, where they actually feel like they need to strike back at society and at the world, or maybe in this case his mother, family. We don't know all those factors, okay? But to strike back like this is pretty much beyond the scope of what we normally think. But nonetheless, I always talk about personality problems and personality disorders out there. I actually do segments on guns in America and personality disturbances. It really doesn't work very well when we have personality problems like this in our midst, and yet we have guns in America as we have it. So there's really a real problem here that we need to address.
You know, this mother had confided in someone and said that she felt that she was losing her son, that he was taking matches or a lighter to burn himself. He couldn't feel pain. She felt that he was going into a darker place. What does a mother do? The kid was over 18 years old. I mean, can you commit someone who's over 18 years old? Or what do you do if you're a parent right now and you're concerned about your own child?
Well, this is a good point. And again, mental health issues. You can commit someone over 18 if you have two physicians. It's not easy.
It's not easy.
It's not easy. But the problem here is, I think that, you know, we try to protect our kids even if they're 20, you know. And in this case, I think she really should have realized that this is a child that has had long-standing problems. What you're talking about represents, to me, long-standing behavioral personality problems. And that's the profile of these people. It's not an individual that just flips out because they've had a bad couple days or a bad month. It's usually over a lot of time where they've developed personality traits and characteristics.
What are some of those traits?
Well, people who are withdrawn from society, they don't socialize very well. They seem to be withdrawn by most folks around them. They're individuals who you do not feel comfortable being around, maybe like your uncle or maybe your cousin or a friend who you feel maybe they'll be explosive. They might be verbally abusive, things like that.
Doctor, you know, it's reached the headlines over the weekend that this young man may have had Asperger's syndrome. Right. And there has been a fair amount of outrage, which seems to make sense, that this is one aspect of his being. Asperger's syndrome and autism have nothing to do by their very nature with the violent acts which were committed. This was just one aspect of a diagnosis of this young man. Am I correct? There is no tie between Asperger's, autism, and a violent act.
That is correct. There's really no research that would suggest the connection there. Many folks, kids with Asperger's syndrome, they may be withdrawn. They have social problems. They have problems interacting with other kids, but not to the point that they may become violent necessarily.
There may be a secondary or tertiary illness which led to what we saw here, or actually something which was more profound.
I say more profound from a standpoint of a personality disorder that's developed over time. And most of these folks do have this profile.
So what do? We have a country filled with people who have some form of mental illness. How do you protect them from themselves and innocence from violent acts which these people may commit? We can't put everyone up, and we do not have the capacity to treat everyone's mental illness or identify it.
That's true, but that's where my point is about behavioral problems or mental health issues in our society. We need to prioritize mental health, not minimize it, number one, but we also have to have gun legislation that makes sense. I happen to believe in the Second Amendment. I don't think we should take people's rights away from them, but on the other hand, assault weapons and large magazines like this, we have to have something that makes sense on a go-forward basis.
Dr. Bart Rossi, thank you so much for being here with us.
I appreciate your insight, Doctor.